I'm Jenny Jaffick-Jones, gardener / paper pusher at the Crimson Poppy, where the beauty of nature blooms in paper form. Anemones, also known as windflowers, translate beautifully into paper blooms. Check out our complete how-to in Paper Art magazine and then try the tips I'm about to share. You'll be making realistic paper anemones of your own in no time. So let's talk about your paper for a minute. As the most important ingredient in your paper flowers, you obviously want it to work for you, not against you. The easiest way to make sure it does that is to pay close attention to the grain. I've got some doublet paper here from Castle in the Air, a roll of crepe paper streamer like you'd find at the party store, and some florist crepe also from Castle in the Air. The florist crepe is the easiest place to see the grain of the paper. It runs this way. All paper has a grain. Some of it's just more obvious than others. When we talk about following the grain of the paper, most of your pattern pieces are going to have some sort of an arrow on them that shows you which direction the pattern piece needs to go in relation to the grain. So these are clipped on and just about ready to cut. Doublet crepe paper, you can actually cut 3 layers at a time. So just fold it over on itself 1, 2, 3 times. Now we got 3 layers. Reclip it, and you're ready to cut it. This way you get 3 times the petals in the same amount of time it would take to cut 1. When we talk about cutting across the grain, for example, this green doublet paper, our grain runs this way. Cutting across the grain is simply cutting like this. With a good pair of scissors, you can cut across the entire fold. This is what we'll do to get strips for wrapping our stems. So that's cutting across the grain. Last but not least, we talk in our tutorial about using black crepe paper, a 24-inch length of the streamer. I've already got this measured out. All we've got to do is fold it over on itself at least twice, and if you've got a good pair of scissors, you can do it one more time. Give it a little stack to make sure it's straight. Clip it, and I use mini binder clips, whether they're plastic or metal. Either one will work for securing your paper and your patterns together. Take your detail scissors, make a snip about halfway in at the end where the fold is. And one of the techniques we use for the anemones is fringing. Fringing is just straight cuts opposite the clips. You just cut straight in, anywhere from 1/2 to 2/3, depending on your instruction. Lots of little straight cuts, and they will give you a fringe when you finish cutting the entire length of this. You'll just unclip it, unfold it. Now, the finer your fringe, or the less space in between these cuts, the more natural it's going to look. You can also take a pair of pinking shears, just trim right across the top. That'll give it an uneven edge, and it'll look much more natural once we're finished. Shaping our petals is what makes our flowers look realistic. For anemones, we need to cup and flute each petal. Cupping simply pinches the petal between fingers of one hand. With the other hand, you draw your thumb across with pressure, pushing down on the paper, and it'll give it a cupped shape. So pinch, pull, and you're cupped. Fluting takes both hands, pinching at the top of the petal, you twist in opposite directions at the same time, and you get a flute. So each petal gets cupped and fluted. Cup it, flute it. So let's make a center for your anemone. I've got stems with caps that I did earlier. I get a pair of pinking shears, which are totally optional, and a pair of detail scissors. I've got one of the green strips we cut earlier. The 24-inch crepe paper streamer roll that has been fringed is clipped and ready to go. Just as a side note, I have taken my pinking shears across the top edge and given this a little more uneven edge so it'll look more natural as we go along. I've got Crafter's Pick Ultimate Glue, which is all I use for my flowers, although I do transfer it into a fine tip glue bottle for a little bit easier application. So let's make a flower. I'm going to use a little bit shorter stem just because they're easier to work with. Going to take our fringe from earlier. Like I said, I cut across mine with pinking shears, but you don't have to do that. I'm going to unfold it, make sure the center is creased so I can use it as a reference point, and then unfold it completely. Starting at that center fold, I'm going to apply a very thin, light bead of glue down the edge that hasn't been fringed. This is our bottom edge. I'm going to fold this back over on top of it. Try to keep those bottom edges as lined up as possible. It will not be perfect, but the closer we can get, the better off we'll be. Pat it together, make sure it's stuck, and then reach for the glue bottle again. You need a very light thin bead on this side, same place we put it a minute ago. Pick it up, hold it up, flip it over, and do this again down the other side. One of the reasons we're using so very little glue is because this paper is very thin, and as it gets wet, it gets more and more fragile and more likely to tear. So that's why we want a really light hand. Take your stem with the cap. There's a flat edge underneath, and that is where you're going to start applying your fringe. I've got the fringe portion above the cap and the rest of it underneath that flat edge. I'm going to pinch it between finger and thumb, and then rather than wrap around in a circle, I'm going to gather and fold as I go. It's going to give us a lot more fullness and make it a lot more even. I'm keeping the bottom edge of the crepe paper strip, that straight one, pretty even as I go around here at the bottom. I'm using my fingers to actually press it onto the stem a little more as I go. Once I make it all the way around, I'm going to use both hands and push really, really hard to get that onto the stem. Our fringe is sticking out and up, a little bit of every which direction, but not too bad. I'm going to take the green paper strip from earlier, add a little glue, and just because we're going to keep working with this, I'm going to get underneath where this cone is that we've created with the uncut edge of the streamer, and I'm going to wrap it around in a circle once, kind of pushing the strips out of the way, twice, and I'm using my fingers to pinch it on, and then I'm going to angle it downwards and wrap in a spiral just a little ways down. It'll help anchor it as we do the next section. We need to clean up the center of the anemone, and we can either do that with pinking shears in teeny tiny bites so it doesn't look like we have taken pinking shears to it, or I can use my detail scissors. This part will make you appreciate your hairdresser because you're going to make teeny tiny snips on one or two little pieces of fringe at a time, and then you're going to change directions to keep it really natural looking, not all of those tips going the same way. And you're going to do that until you get it down to a size and a shape that you want. A finished one will look a little more like this now that he's had his haircut. When you're ready to attach petals, they're going to go here underneath. Once we've wrapped that around, it's given us a little more definition, and our petals are going to get attached right here to the flower. Last but not least, there's wrapping your stem. You need glue, the green strips we cut earlier across the green, and of course your finished stem, which in your case will have a flower on it when you get to this point. I swear by Crafter's Pick Ultimate Glue. I like to transfer it into a bottle with a fine tip, but this is the best stuff ever for making paper flowers. When it comes time to wrap your stem, pick the color you like. You're going to apply a fine bead of glue down the strip. Not heavy, not a lot, not if you're using Crafter's Pick. Put it at the top of your stem just under your flower, and I usually hold on with my thumb. You're going to wrap in a spiral. See how I'm pulling down almost like the bottom leg of the letter K? This keeps my paper smooth as I wrap it in a spiral so it always overlaps. And when I get to the bottom, I'm going to wrap just past it, then pull straight up, almost like I'm making a bed and it's the corner of a bed sheet. Pinch it here at the top, and then just wrap. You can tear it, cut it, make sure there's a little extra glue on the end so it stays. Wrap it on. Now you've got a finished stem. All you have to do is attach leaves and you're ready to go. Between the tutorial and Paper Art Magazine and these extra tips, you're ready to create your own paper anemones. They're perfect for weddings, home decor, and they're a gift to brighten anyone's day. So start making. I'd love to see what you create. Show me your project via Facebook, Twitter, or at thecrimsonpoppy.com. And let me know what flowers you'd like to learn to make next. Until next time, bloom and grow.